Welcome to Cultivating Courage, a podcast exploring fear, courage, and stepping into a life filled with purpose, connection, and love. In this week's episode, we welcome comedian Paul Farahvar. Listen in as we discuss chasing the performer's high, being naked on stage, and that one time Bob Saget changed the course of Paul's life forever. Welcome to another episode of Cultivating Courage. I am your host, Kristen Robinson. Today, you'll notice, if you're watching, that Matt is absent, and in his place, we have a lovely guest co-host, Lindsay Tylis. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to have you here.
My apologies, you guys.
It's a good way to start it. Just apologize right up front.
Just going to lead with that.
Yes.
Apologies.
I like it. All right. Our guest today is comedian Paul Farahvar. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So Paul has a podcast called Singles Only. Mm-hmm. He has a couple of shows at Laugh Factory in Chicago that he does regularly. Everyone's a Lawyer and Drink, Date, Laugh. Mm-hmm. What else do you want people to know about you?
That's good enough. I'm touring and stuff. I do comedy, stand-up. I do guest hosts on WGN Radio and working on some new projects.
Super exciting.
It is.
Yeah. So what's on your mind today, Paul?
That's a very broad question. I don't know.
It is, and yet it isn't.
I don't really think too often beyond what's the next thing that I have to be at.
So, I mean, I don't mean to be like mean, but I know Paul, and that's probably pretty true.
That's true. I don't think far ahead. And I like that about me, actually. I think that when I was younger, I was very neurotic, and I would have my life planned out.
Mm-hmm. Like how far out? Like years out?
Years out, yeah. Like I actually kept a journal when I was 20 that for 3 or 4 months, and I went back and read it, and it's just hilarious. That if it wasn't my handwriting, I'd be like, that's not me. But yeah, I think something changed in me, and after that, I was like, I'm just going to try to be more in the moment.
What do you think inspired that change? Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yes, of course.
Because I'm actually curious, really.
Sure.
Clearly, we went over the rules.
Great.
The rules are there are none.
Super prepared. And yeah, what do you think it was that?
Yeah, I think there was a dramatic thing that happened when I had graduated from law school. A friend, I'd lost a couple friends when I was in college, but then I lost a dear friend to suicide. When I was just the day that I took the bar exam, and that that had a long effect on me in the sense that I stopped living. I started thinking more about living for myself and not for anyone else or what I should be doing. And I think that was probably the biggest impact on my life was that. And I think from then, like my path in my life changed more in the sense that I did things that made me happy as opposed to like the safer route, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Got it. So sorry to hear that. I also lost a very good friend to suicide quite recently.
Yeah.
Guys, there's help out there. You're loved. You're heard. Call your prevention line if you need help. Interjecting that little side note. Yeah.
It had happened. That was the third suicide I had dealt with in the span of like 3 or 4 years. And then, or 3 years. And it was just like, I felt like it was like the one thing that I took away from that. If there's ever a positive from something so tragic is that, it changed the way I lived my life.
Yeah. Wow.
So any other questions? No, I'm just kidding.
We're going to do rapid fire.
And we are done for today.
Shortest podcast episode ever.
Way to bring down the room, Paul. No, I know.
Well, you're a comedian.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to get the tissue.
Well, so I would be curious also to hear so with that in mind, right? So you're living more in the moment. You want to go after more of the things that bring you joy, not just what you think you should be doing based on other people's kind of imposed expectations on yourself. So how did you make the change? So I introduced you as a comedian, but you just told our audience you went to law school and you were a lawyer.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? Because that's a huge thing. Yeah,
there was a few changes. My life was already on a different projection when I graduated law school. I had already started working in a law firm, but I gave myself like a time frame. I'm like, well, I'm going to be a musician. because at the time I was a musician. I was like, I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to finish law school and have that as a safety net. And also, my goal was at that time was to be a one-hit wonder, and then use that as a catalyst to become.
Fantastic goal, by the way.
I thought it was realistic.
It's really
Aim
fantastic.
It was realistic, and I was going to use that as a catalyst to maybe get into the entertainment field, like as a lawyer or something, and that didn't happen. But what happened instead was I worked at a law firm full time for a couple of years, and then I started to do more business aspects of music production, promotion, producing music, and I did that for years.
While you were practicing law.
But I was a part-time lawyer then. So what I did was the change that I decided was, well, I like law because I did like it, but I also like music. So I went to like all these firms. I got some success as a lawyer young because of pure luck. It was just a weird situation that happened. And I went to all these firms that were hiring me. I'm like, which one of you guys will take me part-time? Which was unheard of in the legal field. You kind of know that. It's really hard to do. Especially,
Lindsay's actually a lawyer as well.
Yeah. Back then, this is back in the 70s when I was a lawyer. No, but
You were
it was harder.
A lawyer in diapers.
It's something you see when people have practiced law and they want to go back to their family if they have children or they're retiring. But like I had what was called an of counsel position, which was
that's crazy.
Yeah, I got that because all these idiot law firms thought like I was really smart because I won this case, but I only won the case because the partner who had done all the work on the case wanted to go to the Cubs home opener. And
true one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
You're really a one-hit
That's
wonder.
a good way to put it.
So
Everything
funny.
revolves around the Cubs in a weird way in my life. But he made me argue something for like the appellate court, and I became like the youngest lawyer to win this case that we weren't expected to win. He's like, just go, we're not going to win. And we won. So we created new law in the exciting world of insurance coverage. And
I know.
My specialty.
Yeah, so
it's very,
a
very
Michael
exciting,
Nicholas
guys.
case. You might have heard of it.
Oh,
That's me. Michael Nicholas versus Royal. Google it.
Don't.
You'll be impressed.
Don't. It's not worth it. Listen,
no longer
you're meeting
law.
royalty right
Listen,
here, guys.
as the non-lawyer of the group, I can tell you, don't Google it. It is not worth it.
Well,
So
100%, you guys.
it's no longer law.
Don't
Anyway.
don't Google it.
This was the 90s or 2000. But yeah. So then I just did music, and then I played
Performed music.
I performed and played in bands for a long period of my life.
Cool.
That was like my passion for a long time. And then I went back to law full time because I became passionate about law again. And then I decided to do an open mic, and I like fell in love with comedy. And it's been something that's like resonated with my life and changed my life for better or for worse.
How did you do an open mic? Like,
Right.
was a friend just saying, "Hey, we had a cancellation."
You're kind of
how I'm now
Right.
a
So
podcast host. You just fall into it, right? There's a cancellation. Here you are having a new career as a podcast host.
well, it's a weird.
Listen, I don't pay well. I just want to be upfront about that.
I had
Maybe it doesn't pay me well either. So
yeah, I just decided to do it. No, I had a friend who I thought was really funny, and I was like, you're going to regret if you don't pursue comedy. And I said, you should do it, because I kind of felt the same way about my life, and I was always happy that I gave music a try.
Right.
And he was really funny, and he's like, all right. And he started doing comedy, and I was like, I'll help you, and I'll be like my goal was to be his like manager. I was like, then I could like be comedy adjacent and just kind of like be in the scene and love. I love that aspect of it. But then my friend Chris Bader, he's a comedian, a very funny guy, and he was opening for Bob Saget, and he was so nervous, and he was like, come to this show and be like my manager in the green room. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'm going to the Cubs home opener. Again, it's a weird circle of life.
recurring theme.
Yeah.
And I was drunk. I showed up the same time Bob Saget shows up, and we walk into the green room together across this like casino, and we just kind of hit it off because I had no like starstruck or anything. I was just talking to him like a human being. And
Where
also,
was this?
I was drunk. It was at Horseshoe Casino. I think it was like 8 years ago. I think it's 8 years ago, like one of these days coming up. I'm waiting for the time hop.
Okay.
But then we're backstage. My friend wouldn't even sit in the room with Bob Saget because he was so nervous. So I'm just sitting there with Bob Saget and just talking. And at some point I tell a story. I've been drinking. I was at the Cubs home opener. I don't remember what it was. And he goes, "Oh, are you doing that tonight?" And then I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Are you doing a bit right now?" I was like, "Oh, no. I'm not the comic. Chris Bader is Middle Eastern too. So if you're racist, we look alike." No, I'm just kidding. Bob Saget's not racist. But he thought I was Chris. And so I was like, no, I'm just a friend. He's like, "Oh, do you want to go up and do some time?" That happens a lot when comedians are up. And he thought maybe I was trying to fish for time. But I was like, "Oh, no, I've never done stand-up before." He's like, "Just go up and do a couple minutes. I'm going to do something based on what you do." Whether he was joking or not, he was like, they were pushing me. Everyone in the room was like, go up. And I was like, no, I don't do comedy. I did improv, and I was like, I've never done stand-up. And then I didn't go up. But the next day I did an open mic for the first time, and because of the confidence that Bob Saget thought I was funny. Now, in hindsight, maybe Bob Saget was just being a dick, and he was just like, "Yeah, go up.
This will be
fun.
funny.
Go up. I want to see this.
Yeah.
This
I'm
will
starting
be
to think about that
entertaining
now.
for myself."
Like 8 years in, I'm like, wait a minute, he could have just been messing with me.
Totally fucking with you.
But then I did an open mic, and then the next day after I did the open mic, I thought it was super fun. I went to an open mic contest, and I won, or I came in second place, and they asked me to take over the open mic, which I was like, oh, this is so cool. But anyone that knows comedy knows that that's the shittiest job to have, because no one wants to run an open mic. But they were asking. It's just a lot of thankless work. But I ended up hosting this mic, and it ended up being like a really good open mic because I took it seriously, and like I thought it was. I still say it was one of the best open mics in Chicago.
Dare he say so himself.
2.5 Persians, Merkel's open mic. We had a lot of famous people.
Famous, huh?
Come in there. Yeah, Jeff Garland, Dion Cole, Bill Cosby. No, he didn't show up. But
this guy?
Yeah, Paul was there. So
I started it.
What more do you need?
Again, famous.
So that's how I got into comedy, because Bob Saget thought I was funny, and then you
That's a
you
good claim
chase
to
that
fame.
high. Yeah,
Right?
We'll see. I don't know if he knows that happened, because I've told this story a few times. I'm like worried he's gonna be like, I don't remember this at all.
It's like when you meet an athlete or someone and you're like, "You signed an autograph for me when I was 11. I came to training
totally
camp.
impact
They're
my
like,
life.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
Bye. Good day. Good day.
It's cool working on a radio station where you get to meet some of these people that like you met when you were younger.
Right.
Like we've had guests on the show or in life now, and you're like, do you remember that? And they're like, no. And it's kind of like, yeah.
It's like, well, I do. It was actually the turning point of my life. But that's fine. That's fine. You can to each their own.
But sometimes they do remember, and it's kind of funny, or they at least say they are. But anyway.
Yeah.
So.
But like, how did you decide, like, this is what I want to do?
So
like, this is so much more fulfilling, and this is what I want to pursue.
I was really unhappy as a lawyer towards the end. The parts I liked as a lawyer were performing on a trial. I'd call it performing because I like to be a trial lawyer. And a lot of our clients stopped trying cases, which was very rare, but we had a few that would try cases. And when that started to fizzle out, I started to perform more as a comedian. I love performing. I liked it when I was a musician. I liked it, the trial, the court aspect of it. But comedy was more like, it just, there's a feeling that just brought joy when you write something or you do a show, you make people laugh, and it's just something that like runs my life right now.
What do you think is like behind that? Like, what is that feeling?
I don't know what's behind it. My guess is it has to do with something with performance and needing attention. I don't know why, but if I don't do comedy, like I feel like empty, like for a day. Like I can't go 2 nights in a row without doing a stand-up set right now. Maybe that's going to change later in life, but it's been a long time since that's happened.
Not to speak for you at all, obviously, but I feel like it could also be like an instant gratification thing, right? Like I'm saying as Americans, but maybe just as humans in general, we like instant gratification. I feel like there's no better example than in comedy for instant gratification, right? Like, you speak in an entire room of people, laugh. You pause appropriately and people react, and it's instant and it's fulfilling, and the energy has to be just
there's nothing that compares to having a good show. Yeah. so people have asked me if how it compares to like winning a trial or having a huge concert. Like my band's had some success, but like nothing compares. Something happened recently with one of my bands that I worked on, and like we got this thing that happened on, and I was like, I didn't even care. Like it didn't. I mean, I did care. I was like, oh, this is cool accomplishment, but like I didn't watch it happen. Like we had a song on a TV show, and I was like, oh, I should have recorded that. Like I forgot, but I would never. Like that wouldn't happen for comedy. Like if something happened to me in comedy, it's a different part of my body that like reacts.
Yeah, it's a visceral.
I don't know what visceral means, but I will Google it. Yeah. And as soon as I Google that Michael Nicholas case, second mention.
I would define it, but I think that my definition of it might be different than the actual definition of it, which is somewhat scary.
Let's
to
go
me.
there because I'm just curious.
Visceral to me is like true, honest, raw, kind of
down
like
in your
to the
gut,
soul, like visceral, like it's like. Does anyone have a phone
I
that
was
we could
thinking
Google
of the
this?
word viscosity, which is like oil commercials.
It honestly might be that.
There might
and
be
I've
a
been
Latin
using visceral
this
way.
I'm not. I wasn't.
Whole
that's where
time.
I thought. But
it's
I'm not
possible.
smart.
It's very much possible.
Yeah, I'm not smart in certain things.
All right, you guys are both
wrong.
Can
right
someone maybe
wrong.
Google this?
No.
Visceral is
what
Google
you were
it.
talking about, Lindsay.
guttural.
Like
Is that what
like
it means?
down
Yeah.
in your yes.
That's
Yeah.
how I
And
think of it.
Viscosity is
Thermal
what Paul
breakdown.
defined
Right.
it as well.
That's like casserole.
Right.
It's
I just remember the commercials.
Yeah.
Castrol,
hashtag.
our new sponsor.
Yeah.
Coming to you live. Bye. Yeah. A deep connection too.
Visceral connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, shows
May or may
are-
not be used in the proper context, but
It is the proper
okay,
context. Yeah.
perfect. She's my
But like
dictionary.
what is there for you? Like so what's if you're always chasing that, like what's life?
I don't know. I don't like to think these things out, but
Why?
Then you should
I don't
not
know.
have come. You should not have agreed to be on this podcast.
No, I definitely I don't know how this ends. Like that's a good question. Like people, the question I always hated when people ask me is like, where do you see this going in 2 or 5 years or whatever? Like I don't know what's going to happen. And with comedy, the journey is like part of the. Everyone I say it sounds really cheesy with comedy. People are like, oh well, the path is like what you get out of it or whatever. But it's true. Like every day something changes with comedy, or you're like, oh, that's why this is important, or there's no like shortcuts. So like my goal is to like do something that impacts the world, whether it's something as local as just doing comedy shows, or something in some sort of mainstream media or whatever. And I'd like to make an impact, whether it's small or large, and that's kind of like the goal, I guess. Making an impact is I think, because I don't have kids, I don't think I'm ever gonna have kids, so like what I leave on this earth when I leave is what I think is the goal.
Like what you create.
What I created, yeah.
Yeah.
These are my kids. My jokes are my kids.
Right.
My jokes about farts. No, I don't have any jokes about farts.
But
Can you say farts?
You can. So that was a fun way to like not answer my question.
I'm going to politics. With
What
that
did
type of
what didn't I?
question
what was the
answering
question?
ability.
The question is like if you're constantly and I'm not like belittling like what you see
I'm not
for
trying to be
like
Coy
your
or
plan.
visceral.
Yeah, your plan.
Did I use that right?
Or viscosity.
No.
Either way.
But
Tomato,
like
tomato.
if you're constantly chasing the high, what is like what's life? What's day-to-day life? Like how do you if you don't create that, then how does that impact? Yeah, if like so you said I don't go a day or two. I can't go a day or two without like creating that for myself. So like you're asking an audience every night to validate like who you are. So like
are you asking if there's another way to
Isn't
get
that exhausting?
Are you asking if there's another way to get that high, or or if that's the only way you can get it? What do you do if you're off that day? Or
well, no, I guess
where will I get the validation if I don't have the show?
Yeah, it's more about like the external validation every night. So what I'm hearing is like
it's definitely
the audience is validating like who you are and that you're funny and that like what you have to say matters. And like so you're constantly seeking that externally. But like what if someday that doesn't exist? Like then what?
No, that's a good question, and that's a problem that comedians often have, is that you have this need for validation, and when it's not there, you know, there's self-destruction that can result, and that's definitely a fear of mine. But yeah, I try to create internal validation where it's like, okay, well, I know that I've done X, Y, and Z, and that's important as well. But will that be like me? Will that be a healthy alternative? I don't know. But I know right now, those are the things. And there's also like, little things that, you know, times where you get to smell the roses where you're like, okay, this was on this show or something like that. It's like, okay, that's cool. That's something that I can validate myself, and that no one will ever be able to take away from you.
Yeah.
And that always happens. And that's like, those are those moments, or peaks where you hit with comedy or anything, where you're like, okay, I've done that. That creates, validity for me and makes me happy, or it should at least.
I've talked to Kristen a lot in recent months because I was practicing law for a long time and recently gave it up after I had my son, who's a few months old. And we've talked about just this general idea of what is my purpose? What am I passionate about? What am I going to do next? This is a clean break for me to, you know, at least leave that firm. You know, am I going to go back to a similar firm that does the same thing, the same firm, no firm, you know, something totally different? And this concept of, you know, what are you passionate about? What truly brings you joy? You know, what's important to you? And do you think it's worth kind of exploring for you, okay, you know, the validation that I get when I'm up on stage, you know, gives me a certain, whatever you want to call it. Is it worth seeking that out in other facets of your life? Like, can I find that elsewhere in addition to, not as a replacement of, but in addition to that, if X isn't there, then Y brings me back up to the same kind of place? Or do you think that's too forced, or do you think that's unattainable or not organic? Or
I think that would be good if I could do that. I just don't know how. There's what that is. That's not like an unhealthy thing. Whether it's, you know, eating to excess, like getting excited to get a burrito, or like finding a connection in a relationship or something like that, where it's like, okay, that's something that brings you happiness. Because I'm like kind of like a focus, I always kind of like almost too focused on things when I get obsessed with what I want to succeed in, for lack of a better word. It's hard for me to have multiple facets in my life. So like personal relationships definitely don't have a priority to me, because my head is always thinking about my career, whether it's writing or like pitching something for one of my new projects, or
do you see it as not having enough time for personal relationships, or not enough emotional I don't know. Bandwidth. Enough emotional pennies in the pot, you know, to devote to that. For lack of a better word that I clearly can't find.
I would say it's time, but more mental space. Right. So like I was talking to someone about this recently who made a good point. He said there's only a limited amount of or there's a finite mass in your brain where you can spend or think about things. And what I noticed when I quit my law firm, the day that I quit my law firm, like all of a sudden, and I was like kind of a partner I was a partner at the firm.
An actual one.
I was managing a lot of the bullshit that I had to deal with on the day to day with employer benefits and all that stuff. But the day that I quit, I literally felt like 70% of my brain power could now be used creatively. And I remember that day vividly. Like I went out and I was like, I went to a comedy show, which I had never done just to watch, because usually you're performing at them. I had like a great night. I got to hang out with some other friends that are comedians. And then I went home and like I wrote jokes for the first time in like a long time, where I spent an hour writing new stuff. And so I use that example because I like to have all my space focused on my career, that if I spend more than, there's only that finite amount in your brain that you can spend mental space for personal relationships, family, etc.
Yeah, that's true. I would say by counterpoint, and not to offer you advice or really anyone.
I need advice.
It's more just like a thought to put out in the universe, which is and because I'm now devoting so much of my time to raising my son, and people ask me, are you going to have another child? I'm like, no, I can't. Like he's all I have, and he takes up everything that I have. And so many people will say, oh, just wait. If you were to have another one, you don't think you have the capacity in your heart to love as much or devote as much love or whatever. Yeah. But your heart just grows. And it sounds incredibly cheesy and ridiculous, but I think I see what people mean, not that we're on that path, and I am kind of sticking to my guns more just for practical reasons. I just want to have the one. It's easy for me. It's fine. But perhaps it'd be one of those things where if it were, the right thing or situation or whatever, you may think academically, I don't really have the emotional, physical, or whatever, the minutes in the day or the time in my mind or heart or whatever to devote to this, but the right situation presents itself, and then it turns out that your space grows, you know, so you're working with the different confines of time and energy, and it's a bit,
Well, and I think one of the things that happens for all of us is that we think things need to be a certain way, and we can't see the possibility that, like, oh, well, what I know about relationships or what I know about work, like it could be anything, whatever you're kind of like struggling with, right? Like what I've seen and what I've experienced are these things. And so therefore work, relationships, life, hobbies, whatever, they have to be this way, but I would rather it was this way.
Right.
And because we've never actually seen that, and we don't think it's possible. But like, what if we just open ourselves up to the possibility as like kind of like that first baby step, right? Like, I don't think that I could have like fulfilling relationship that doesn't take me away from my work that I'm finding so fulfilling at this moment. But like, maybe it is possible.
You're talking to someone that thought they wouldn't love their baby as much as their dog. So that's a concern in of itself. But I truly was like, oh my gosh, like I love these dogs who drive me insane.
One of my colleagues
every
asked
day, and
someone the same question.
Love this baby. Turns out it's possible. But it was
if Lindsay can love her baby as much as she loves her dog, there's a lesson in there somewhere.
Anything
for
is
sure.
possible. Truly, anything is possible. I honestly had that concern for myself. It's all I knew is like my actual baby and my true love. It's really scary in hindsight, but it's edit that out.
Thoughts like that, kind of like.
Please edit that out. The internet is forever. Kid's gonna see this one day.
Yeah, he's not gonna like that.
It's like, I hate you, Mom.
What'd you say?
I hate you, Mom.
This is why I became a comedian. That's what he's gonna say in 20 years.
He's like, I remember the moment when I was watching that podcast.
I see, like, for me, if forget about the growing heart metaphor that you used. Is metaphor the right thing?
Yeah. I said analogy.
It's been a lot of like
essentially the same
vocabulary today.
I always feel very insecure about my vocabulary. So that and the mental space issue, the practicality of time. Like for me, I started late in comedy, so I always feel like I'm making up for lost time. So whatever free time I have, like there's 40 other things that I wish I could do to self-improve that have nothing to do with comedy.
Right.
And none of those involve like other people. Like I kind of like being like for me, it's like, oh, if I had an extra hour, like now recently, like I stopped taking new cases. So like my office, I have like a finite day where my lease is up for my office space that I have. And I know that that's done. Like that aspect of my life is coming quicker than I thought, which is great.
Right.
But to me, like the first thought I had is like, oh, cool. Maybe my band can have that reunion show. Like, cause the one thing that I miss about my life is music. Cause I was a musician. I was playing a lot and I was like, that's that. Or like, I wanted to take this improv class cause I miss improv. Those are the things that I would, replace my time with if it wasn't for comedy, or that when I have more time. The fact of bringing in like a child or a personal relationship like doesn't even.
But I think that is that. Still,
it could be,
yeah.
I was just by analogy, like it could be any of those things. Like,
and I think that's the point though. Like, is that it doesn't matter that it's like growing your heart to make space for someone else. It's growing your heart to like give yourself the things that like you want and you
accomplish
desire.
The things that you're looking to do.
But the problem with that, and not a problem, but if those are both things that have like instant gratification too, which is like music playing live. The parts that I liked about being in a band were not like the practices. I liked the writing the songs that were cool. I liked performing live. Improv, I just liked it because I want to get better at stand up. So they're all like instant gratification things.
They're
which
not
aren't
actually like true
growth.
Fulfillment,
right?
Like,
so
where
I don't know
you
if that's healthy.
Well, instant gratification can be true fulfillment, right? I mean, can it? I mean, if that's what truly gives you immense pleasure, and you can, if you arrange your schedule in such a way, and your life and your tasks in such a way that those are how you spend your time, I don't see why that can't happen. I mean, not to say, I think it's important to have a diversity to what fulfills you, because you can't do only one thing or whatever. But, if you were to set your intentions to do things that you're passionate about, whatever, they may all be things that give you instant gratification. There's not anything necessarily wrong with that.
But I think it depends where you're getting the gratification. I think it depends where that gratification is coming from.
Yeah, that's
like if
dirty.
it's
true. That's absolutely true.
Constantly an external source of gratification. Like if you're seeking that laughter from other people,
right?
That's not good.
Things that you can't control.
It's not necessarily like, I don't mean it's like bad, but like if instant gratification isn't necessarily bad, but where you're getting that gratification and like that is a slippery slope. Like if you need someone else to tell you through their laughter or through their applause or through their screams because you're on stage like totally shredding your guitar, man.
We played like sissy rock, but
but like that's if you can't find that internally and you're constantly seeking it externally, that's not healthy.
Right, I guess, but I would say,
but I'm not.
I agree. I think I would just add to it that just because the gratification might be coming from someone's response, it's someone's response to you. So what you're putting out there is what's coming back to you in a way.
Yeah.
It can't stand on its own. Or
as long as you have the outlook that you can't control the things you can't control,
right? And
you just put out your best effort.
If you're getting fulfillment from just playing or just telling, like being up on stage, and it doesn't matter if there's cheers and there's laughter and there's screaming and there's bras being like thrown up on stage. If none
throwing up bras,
I know, I heard it and then I couldn't fix it.
Yeah, gotcha. It's like a magician.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Which I do want to take a magic class, but anyway, that's for another time.
That's amazing.
But like, if you are doing those things because you get sheer pleasure regardless of the audience's reaction,
right?
Okay, cool. But if your confidence and your who you are is dependent on the audience laughing or cheering, that's not ideal, because how do you love yourself.
Listen,
but I think that's, I've been
it.
talking to Kristen about how I was a bit detached from my career, and there's a blessing and a curse in that, because I could go home at the end of the day and obviously care intellectually about my cases and all that, but
Sure.
it wasn't defining me as a person. So if your career is defining you because you've chosen a path that you're so passionate about personally, that could present challenges in terms of finding gratification outside of your career.
Every career I've had, whether I was running playing in bands or running a music company or being a partner at a law firm, my career was my life.
Right.
There was nothing. If you look at my personal life, throughout those years, it's always been that way.
Right.
And I don't know if I do that so I don't have a personal life. I purposely put myself in these positions because I could have just stayed in other fields and just like been, successful,
Right.
Objectively speaking, and just worked on my personal life and tried to find fulfillment in that. But then I choose like what many people consider one of the hardest jobs in the world. To be successful at, which is kind of funny because there's real hard jobs. Comedy is not that hard, but it is hard to be good at it. But there's people that are digging ditches. I would never want to do.
Right.
I don't know why I said that, but yeah,
no,
I think that
point of perspective, right? I mean, it's just all relative.
I think that that's just the way that I grew up in a family where work ethic was so important. My dad is a workaholic, and I as early as 14, I was like working a job to work, and like I wanted to always work. And so,
do you feel like you need to emulate that behavior in order to have a valid career? Maybe not so consciously, but do you think that is something, that example?
Absolutely. I think that's something that still sticks with me in a way that I'm still trying to like get approval from my family.
Right.
They're like still in denial that I'm not a lawyer, but it's just something that no matter what I do, that's something I can't shake. It's just going to be a part of me. It's a cardinal trait that I have.
Right. But what if it doesn't have to be?
Well, what am I going to do? Then I have no like purpose in life. I'll just like, I don't know.
If you're not constantly seeking your family's validation, is that what you mean?
No, I meant the cardinal trait of having like a good work ethic.
No, I mean like, so you're kind of like, oh, it's a part of me. Like, this is who I am because I'm holding on to this like thing that I saw that was when I was a child, and now I've created it for myself. Like, what if it didn't have to be that way? What if you didn't need that approval like from them? What if you just had approval from yourself of like, this is my life and I love it?
That would be cool. But I just don't. I think that there's a pro and con. Obviously, the pro is that it's instilled good moral and ethical values that my parents have.
Oh, I'm not saying give up your work ethic.
No, right. But the bad part is that like, it's still a part of me that like prevents personal growth in a lot of ways because I'm so focused on like success for whatever that is. Yeah. So there's the thing, but I don't know how to find that balance where it's like, oh, that's healthy. You don't need to have your parents' approval.
Yeah. I think it's important in life as when you're an adult to do things for you.
Yeah.
And whatever that means to you, whatever that means in the context of your family and your own purpose and career and whatever, just in general, say, am I doing this for me? Yeah. You can, trust the fact that you have a work ethic and trust the fact that you're being responsible, assuming that you're in a good place and whatnot. But assuming, all things being even, and you're in a good spot and, to ask yourself that question, like, am I doing this for me or am I doing this for someone else? And that could be really powerful.
Doing stand-up comedy is like the most doing it for yourself job you can have because you have to be a borderline narcissist to want to go on stage and expose yourself by yourself on stage, with a band or anything, and personal stories,
Yeah.
at least for me, because I'm talking about myself on stage.
Right.
I'm not doing one-liners, which are great too, but I just don't do them.
I've always wondered how much. So like I know that, and we'll wrap up soon. I promise. Probably.
I was
maybe.
gonna try to get my coffee.
So I've always wondered. I know that you use like personal stuff for your stand-up.
Yes.
But like, where's the line of it being a bit and you like really believing what you're saying on stage about yourself?
This is a good question.
Because like
last night I happened to watch Amy Schumer and Kevin Hart's
both
stand-up
of them?
things.
Oh.
I don't know why. I was just kind of in the mood to watch it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this the entire time.
Because like I know you personally, so I kind of know like what in your sets are like true and like what's embellished, whatever.
Right.
But like my question is, at what point some of that self-deprecating stuff, like at what point is that just part of the act, and at what part, like, or are you like actually believing that about yourself?
I think that a lot of what I say on stage, I believe about myself. I think that obviously that's like exaggerated.
Right.
I don't know where the line is. I think as you grow as a comedian, there's less self-deprecating and more just real stories. But the self-deprecation, there's definitely those insecurities that you have that you carry with you for the rest of your life. But yeah, I mean, I don't know where the line is, but there's it's a subjective thing. You know, certain things I do believe about myself, and certain things I'm like, oh, you know, I think it's just funny. But
Yeah.
I would say for most of the stuff I say, I do believe it, or because you say it so much, you know,
That's what I mean.
Times
Right.
That's what I
month,
mean. Yeah.
you
That's
start believing it.
exactly what
Yeah.
I mean. Because like there's just like as your friend, right? Like there's certain things where I'm like, I hope he doesn't like really like believe that. But I think that just like anything, like you say good stuff enough, you believe the good stuff. You
Right.
say bad stuff enough, you believe the bad
Yeah.
stuff. And like if you're up there saying it every night, like how do you counter that to say like this isn't really who I am? Like it's funny and it's like a part of me and like whatever, but it's not like at the core of who I am.
So I mean, I don't know if you're using specific examples, but like the stuff about my music career I talk about on stage, when I talk about it, I do believe that. I do know that I wasn't a good musician, but I like surrounded myself with talent, and that's why we were successful. But the stuff about law, like I don't believe that. I know that I was a good lawyer because I did have external validation. I had wins as a trial lawyer.
Or because you know you're a good lawyer because you know you're a good lawyer.
No,
not
because
not necessarily because of the validation,
well,
but because
right.
you know you're smart.
The
and
validation
you know
for
the
me
law
is that there were certain awards that I got as a lawyer that, going back to what we talked about earlier, no matter what happens, if I had a bad case or I had a bad victory or a bad loss, I would always be like, well, I know that this is something I can't control. Jury got it wrong or whatever. Right. Because I know what my client said about me. I know that I won 40 under 40 when I was a lawyer or whatever. Shameless plug. And
I have a signed copy of the magazine, you guys.
That's
Don't
right.
be too jealous.
So
it can be yours too for a price.
Yeah,
So-
that's right. Leave a comment. I might be selling it soon.
So yeah, like I know that that part of it isn't true, but the stuff about me personally, about my family, about me, there's a lot of truth in there, and there's that stuff. But I think the one great thing about comedy is it is like therapeutic in a lot of ways, where you start to reveal yourself. You're very naked on stage in a sense, and it helps you grow personally. At least for me, it has. And there's a lot of introspection that you have to do to be a comic that helps you grow individually, or also stunts your growth in a lot of ways too. But
yeah,
for me, it's a little of both.
I was thinking about this again. I just said that I was, for some reason had this in my head. I was going to watch stand-up routines last night. And what resonated with me, and Kevin Hart and Amy Schumer had completely different styles, but the common theme was that they were, what made it so funny, I think, is that it's so honest, and they explore topics that people just for whatever reason don't talk about. Amy was talking about, just some of the realities of pregnancy and the discomforts and some graphic details and whatnot. And Kevin was talking about, getting caught publicly, on camera, cheating on his pregnant wife. I mean, it's what people are afraid to conversation topics people conversation topics people are afraid to broach, right? And I think it makes them relatable. I think that was actually the name of Ellen DeGeneres's
it was actually
stand-up routine, because which I thought was genius, because when I watch these routines and these bits, it's all about things that happen to everyone and all of us
with your life.
It's everything that you don't even talk to your best friend about, really, per se, and it just draws you in. And so regardless of what the topic is, it's just that self-deprecating aspect, I think, is a big part of it, because that's the reality of it, and so people find this connection to it, and it makes it authentic and just and desirable to see from someone's perspective, because you don't get that in your everyday communications with people. Like, people are so buttoned up, it seems, and put on this facade and whatever. And comedians seem to strip that all away, and it's refreshing to see that and be like, oh yeah, me too. By the way, I totally. So it's cool. I applaud you guys as in you comedians, because I think it's really cool
specifically
to be bare like that. That's
it's a level of vulnerability
it doesn't
kind of
shock
unmatched.
me that you're saying instant gratification is a big thing, because you're coming
Exposed.
from a place of vulnerability. Like, I would be on trial, and I doesn't necessarily need instant gratification, because I'm not like stripping myself down to the bare bones of myself.
Personally.
I am advocating for a client's position in an insurance case. I'm okay with a judge saying, I'll get back to you on a ruling. Okay, cool. But for you, I mean, you're putting yourself out there, right? As exaggerated as it may be, but that's, for the most part, I would think it's pretty honest.
Yeah, I mean,
I would think
that's the one thing about comedy that is hard for people, because if with music, when people ask me what the difference was with music, you have a bad show, or like the crowd's not into it, it's like, oh, they don't like alt country or whatever you're in, or our guitarist wasn't on that night, which was me. But it's not as personal. But if you're on stage, at least for people who tell stories or talk about themselves on stage, if you bomb or you have a bad show, they don't like you.
Right.
It's very personal.
You
and
just
know it right
yourself
away.
Out there.
Yeah. I mean, you'll know that you bombed, and that's definitely it's hard for people, because it's hard to bounce. Sometimes it's, especially when you're a younger comic or you're a newer comic, it's hard to bounce back. But as you get older, like, it makes you it's cheesy, they say it, but it does make you a better comic, if that's what you're supposed to do. If you're bombing all the time, just quit. Just quit comedy.
Go out while you're not ahead.
But do you learn to, like, I don't know, like, toughen up, get thicker skin? Like, do you learn to take it not so personally, even
sometimes,
though it feels really personal?
Yeah, you definitely do. Sometimes you can listen back. I record all my sets, so you listen back, so you see what went wrong. But then, I mean, it definitely stings. Like,
I can't imagine how
you get older,
how it couldn't.
As you get older, it's you start doing it more. It's not as bad as before. But, but yeah, I mean, I still bomb. I just bombed on Tuesday, so it happens all the time.
Yeah,
it's part of life.
We think you're funny.
Yeah, we think you're funny. We think you're so funny. I wore a Better Call Paul t-shirt.
Shameless promotion available now at all Amazon. No, it's not.
Okay, so I feel like this is a pretty good place to wrap it up, if everybody's cool with that.
Yeah, okay.
Favorite color?
Yellow.
Favorite drink?
Diet Coke.
Favorite city?
Chicago.
Question. I'm Ron Burgundy. Question mark.
What other rapid fire questions can we ask?
Oh, is it really a rapid fire?
I don't know. Oh, I mean, why not?
Messing around. Okay. No, that's.
I think I might be out.
Is that not your favorite drink or city or?
No,
I think
those are right. Okay. I thought like
favorite food.
Chicago didn't. I didn't know if it included Chicago.
Oh yeah, it can.
Yeah. It did.
Favorite food.
Burritos.
Favorite vacation you've ever been on?
I went to London. That was pretty fun by myself.
Favorite hair gel, because our audience wants to know.
Kevin Murphy Clay. Extra hold.
Clearly, extra hold.
Sponsor me.
All right, cool. So at the end of every episode where we have a guest, we let them take like a second and then share what they've learned in life with the audience. Yeah. So if you were to give yourself like your younger self advice, what would you tell them? What would you tell yourself?
Don't plan too far ahead. There's a silver lining in everything. If you can find the silver lining in everything in life or anything that happens to you, you will grow and succeed.
I love that. All right, everybody, that's another episode of Cultivating Courage. You can find the podcast at cultivatingcouragepodcast.com. If you'd like to connect with Lindsay, where can people find you?
L Tylus on Instagram, LTYLUS.
Okay.
Or Lindsay Tylus on Facebook.
Paul, where can people connect with you?
Paul Farahvar Instagram, common spelling, or Paul F Comedy. It's a website and a YouTube page.
Awesome. You can follow me on Instagram at Robinson Kristen, Kristin. You can also check out my website, thrivecoachingstudio.com. And that's a wrap, friends.